Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at the Spinnaker Overboard, codename SP-5023. So without further ado, let's start the unboxing process. So it comes in this nice outer box, and then, it comes in this very funky mini Pelican waterproof case, which I was very surprised by. Usually Spinnaker boxes are pretty rubbish. So this is a really nice, unusual feature. Lift up the catch, and here it is in all its epic glory. So we have a little tag here, just telling you the model number, and there we have it. So unboxing process better than normal for a Spinnaker, so that's got it. It's got that going for it. So nice little travel case if you want to use it, and I'm sure it's probably waterproof, but I don't know the exact specs of that box. So this is the watch itself in question. The Spinnaker Overboard is a watch with 1,000 meters water resistance, or 100 ATM, which is pretty outrageous, really. Price wise, it's not actually too crazy. So it's RRP of $400 or £310. I've got a 20% off code that you can use, WIAA20, as in Watch All About 20. That gives you 20% off, so that would make it 320 US dollars, or about £250. So obviously that brings it down to a much more suitable price range. So let's talk about some of the specs. Obviously the main specification is the water resistance. 100 atmospheres, 1,000 meters is pretty incredible, really. Probably none of us will ever go down that far, but it's still pretty cool to have, quite a epically rated watch. Because of the rating, it is absolutely huge. So I've got about a 7¼ inch wrist for your reference. So as you can see, we have a massive height. It's 19 mil height. So it's certainly not going under any cufflinks, under any shirt cuffs. Pretty whopping diameter of 46 mil as well. So again, you've got to have big wrists to be able to pass this one off. And then a lug-to-lug length again of a massive 56.5 mil. So really massive watch. No denying that you need to be able to pass this off. You need to be a certain size guy, I guess, unless of course you just really love big watches. It's also extremely weighty, 199 grams, so it really does feel chunky and just well constructed on your wrist and when you're holding it as well. We've talked about the water resistance. Now the lug width is a bit unusual because it's stepped in, as you can see. So this outer lug width is 29.5 mil, and then this inner section here inside the lugs is 21 mil. So it's obviously a custom molded rubber strap, so you probably won't need to change it, and if you do, it will be very awkward cutting it in, so chances are you'll never have to change that. 2-year warranty, which is pretty good in case anything happens. And the crystal, annoyingly, is hardened mineral. You'd expect it to be sapphire, really. However, it is nice and clear. And it's hardened. They say hardened mineral, so that probably means it's sapphire coated, which is obviously better than just straight up mineral crystal, but it's still a bit of a bummer. If you're spending $320 or 250 quid, you'd want a sapphire crystal, really, wouldn't you? So finally, the movement. Now, I had a little bit of trouble finding which movement it was, because obviously you can't see it because it's got a solid case back. And the only clues I had was this open heart at 9, and then the fact that it is Seiko. So after a bit of digging, I found that it's most likely the Seiko 4R38 movement, which is actually one of their slightly better movements than the base spec. Kind of movement that you'd see in their cocktail time presage kind of range. So their watch is costing quite a few hundreds of pounds and dollars, so it's quite impressive that they put that movement in here. Specs include 24 joules, 41-hour power reserve. It's got a low beat of 21.6 thousand beats per hour, so that's 6 ticks per second. And then other specs include the fact that you can hand wind it, and obviously it's also automatic winding, and it has a hacking seconds hand as well. So quite pretty good. In terms of Seiko movements, they're pretty reliable. Many Seiko movements just run for years and years without the need of any service. So you're in good hands there. Finally, the regulation, is probably not been touched at all. It's plus 24.8 seconds a day, which is quite far out. But you know, if you're not going to be wearing this watch for a daily wear, then it shouldn't cause you too much issue. And if it does cause you issue, then it will be easy to regulate a bit more. Okay, so let's discuss the watch in closer detail, aspect by aspect. So starting off with the dial, first of all, because of the thickness of the dial, obviously it needs to be thick to be able to handle the intense pressure of 1,000 meters. It is set quite deep, mainly because the crystal most likely is really, really thick. So you do have quite a tremendous amount of depth to the dial, which I really like. Helps that you've got this curved rehaut around the outside as well. And then this wavy central section of the dial is ever so slightly stepped in as well. So again, a nice bit of depth there. And then we have our hour markers, a variety of shapes like trapeze and then circles as well. I do like the little badge at 3 with 1,000 meters on it. You know, when you look up close, you know, it's relatively well made. You know, usually you'd expect that to be a little bit cheap and tacky looking, but it looks pretty cool. The Spinnaker logo, I think, probably could be a little bit nicer. However, it does work well because it's applied on top of the wavy texture. As you can see, the wavy texture gives you a really nice, you know, variety of reflections based on the angle of the light. So that's really nice. It's subtle enough, but still eye-catching. We then have our open heart, located at 9, ticking away there with a rose gold surround to it to match the bezel. So very nice work there with the colour. And then if we look at our hands, sort of like a brushed finish to them, you know, with the industrial kind of feel following through there. Nice and bold as well. The loom isn't the strongest, however. You know, you can barely see it coming through there. And even when you charge it with like a light, for instance, proper light source, it doesn't stay bright very long, which is quite a big issue for a watch weighting 1,000 meters. You'd expect it to be pretty good loom, but unfortunately it's not. Moving on to the case then, we have this massive rose gold bezel, which is really lovely to use. Very smooth and buttery action. Decent thick grip as well, so it is easy to use. And all the markings are engraved and painted. We have a brushed finish to it as well with a polished side. So that's nice and eye-catching. And then moving on to the case proper. We have a DLC coating with a mixture of polished and brushed finish to it. So we have very angular kind of feel to the entire case. These like angles on top of the case and then all the lugs as well. A lot going on for it. Cheeky little helium release valve is here as well. So that is probably, you know, quite important for a watch rated at 1,000 meters. That's pretty neat. Then on this side we have the Spinnaker logo. It's like screwed on by this little plaque here. Again, nice and accurate, nice and neatly done. Spinnaker, for my taste, is probably a little bit too bold and a bit too brash. You know, it's quite like Invicta, but even worse because it's painted white. I think if the text was a little bit thinner, it would have looked a little bit nicer. And then on the lugs, we have these really cool little screws holding the strap in place. So again, really nice attention to detail there, even at close range. Then our crown is really, really nice to use. If I undo it, it's exceptionally solid and really nice. We've got this knurled grip, but also that red splash of colour on the central channel there. And we have the Spinnaker logo ever so slightly engraved on the end. That could probably have been engraved. It would have been a lot nicer if it was, but it doesn't stop it from being a really good crown, really good, easy to use. And when you use it, when you're adjusting the time, you just feel how sturdy and chunky everything is and how well put together it is. Moving on to the case back then, it is polished stainless steel, so it does look a little bit unusual. However, you know, it's difficult to screw DLC onto DLC, so obviously the thread of the case back has to be stainless steel, otherwise it'll be difficult getting the case back off. We have like this little motif of the Spinnaker logo with some waves, which is pretty neat, and then some various information around the outside, sort of like lightly engraved. So it's not something you probably pay too much attention to, but there we go. Moving on to the strap then, so I've mentioned this a custom shape, but it's really soft, really malleable as well. Sometimes these rubber straps can be really, really harsh and really difficult to break in, but this is lovely and comfortable. Nice detailing here as well, Spinnaker logo. It's fairly subtle but good in terms of design. And then we have the Spinnaker logo embossed on the bottom here, so it's nice to see a proper decent custom strap. And then finally our tang buckle with the Spinnaker logo engraved on the end there, with a brushed DLC coating to match the case. Okay, so let's get the macro lens on and we'll have a look at it in much closer detail. So starting off with the dial. Here's the logo, so you can see it's on its own little plaque, but a little bit on the thin side. We are then introduced to our pretty thick and accurate wave background to the entire dial, and then we have some of our hour markers as well. Here's our open heart, the movement ticking away nicely, and our brushed surround to it as well, if I can get it in focus. And then moving on to our hands, unusual shape, which is nice to see. See a little bit of tool marks on the second hand there, not quite as tidy as would have liked to have seen, and then our little plaque with 1,000 meters there. I'm sure it's probably only just stuck on rather than actually using the screws, but it's still, you know, reasonably thick, as you can see if I get it at a slight angle. It's nice to see that level of quality there. And then we have this rehout as well at a slightly higher level. Okay, moving on to the bezel then. See there a little bit of a issue with the loom pip, not the neatest really. Then we have these really thick, deep markings on the bezel, which are pretty nice and impressive. As you can see, they're really deep. Brush top as well, and then we have our grip on the side, which is polished. Moving on to the case itself then. So here's the text of Spinnaker. We have our brush sides as well. One of our screws for the lugs. And you can see these straight lines on the tops of the case as well. Moving it over to our helium release valve. There it is. Cheeky little mention there, referring to the helium release valve. And then our crown. As you can see, it's lightly laser etched. It's a shame that that's not engraved really. And then here we have the knurled grip of the very nice crown. So just giving the case back a quick wipe and have a look at the case back itself. So we can see this is engraved, ever so slightly engraved though. And we have some various details surrounding the outside. So moving on to the strap. Here's the top. You can see there, nice and neat. This top detailing with the Spinnaker logo, and it's the same on the other side. And then at the base we have the Spinnaker icon, nice and deeply embossed on top. And then finally we have the tang buckle as well. There we go, nice and neatly engraved out of that. Okay. So there's a couple of negatives that I think are a bit of a shame. First of all, the fact that it's not sapphire crystal is a bit of a bummer. And then there's a couple of little minor details as well, which you only really notice under a macro lens, but you know it's still there. The loom pip is not the best. Spinnaker logo is a little bit on the light side for my liking, but you know, the loom as well could definitely be better. But apart from that, you know, you are getting a massive amount of watch for the money, especially with the code WIA20, which gives you 20% off. $320, £250 for an automatic watch rated at 1,000 meters. You know, it's really, really difficult to find an alternative, really. I'm pretty sure that this is, you know, one of the cheapest and deepest dive watches available, if you know what I mean. So great movement as well. The Seiko 4R38, no complaints there. 2-year warranty. Is so weighty as well, and just the general appearance of it is just mightily impressive, as you can imagine. I mean, look at the size of this thing. The case as well is pretty cool as well. So, you know, many positives. Couple of little minor negatives, but I don't think they should really be too much of a concern. So if you're really after a decent deep sea diver for a relatively cheap price, then the Spinnaker Overboard is a very good choice for you. So this is what you're all about. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, please guys. Thank you very much, and see you next time.